The man was dying, but that wasn't what made Nara's breath catch in her throat. It was the way he held those two babies like he was trying to shield them from death itself. Blood soaked through his expensive shirt, spreading dark and wet across his ribs. His hands, strong hands, the kind that had never known real hunger, gripped the twins so tightly his knuckles had gone white. And when his eyes found hers through the fading light, they weren't pleading for his own life. They were begging for theirs. Nara had been walking the back trail through the mountains, trying to get home before the cold bit too deep. Her stomach ached the way it always did, empty, tight, a feeling so familiar it had become part of her. She wasn't looking for trouble. She never was. But trouble had a way of finding her anyway. The baby's cries had cut through the wind first, high, desperate, terrified. No child should sound like that. She had followed the sound into a clearing where she found him slumped against a rock, barely breathing, barely conscious, but somehow still holding on. Help them. His voice was rough, broken by pain. Not me. Them. Nara's heart slammed against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run. This wasn't her problem. This wasn't her world. But the babies were shaking, and the wind was getting colder, and their cries sounded like the cries she used to make when she was small and scared and no one came. She couldn't walk away. She stepped closer, her worn shoes crunching on gravel. You're hurt bad. I need to get you to a hospital. No. The word came out sharp, forceful, despite the blood on his lips. No hospitals. No police. She froze. You're dying. I know. He coughed, and more blood appeared. But if they find me alive, they'll finish what they started. And they'll kill anyone who helped me. The air seemed to grow colder. Who's they? He didn't answer. His grip on the babies loosened, and the little girl, tiny, fragile, wrapped in what looked like silk, started to slip. Nara lunged forward and caught her, then carefully lifted both twins into her arms. They were so small. So helpless. The blanket around them was expensive, probably cost more than everything Nara owned, but now it was streaked with dirt and blood. What's your name? She asked quietly. Cairo. He swallowed hard, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Please. I don't have much time. Nara looked at him, really looked. His clothes were too clean for someone who lived rough. His jacket was tailored, custom-made. Even cracked and bloody, his watch looked like it belonged in a jewelry store window. Nothing about him made sense out here in the mountains, bleeding and alone. Who did this to you? His jaw clenched. Someone I trusted. The words hung heavy in the cold air. Before she could ask more, a sound ripped through the trees, a branch snapping. Heavy footsteps. Voices, low and sharp, getting closer. Cairo's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His strength surprised her. Go. Now. If they see you with me, they'll kill you too. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She could hear them now, multiple people, moving through the forest with purpose. I can't just leave you. You already saved them. His voice dropped, raw and desperate. That's all that matters. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Branches breaking. Commands being shouted. There's a cabin, Cairo rasped, his voice fading. Down the hill. Old, falling apart. Hide there until morning. Before you find out what happens next, if you're loving this story of justice and survival, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what Cairo's about to reveal will change everything Nara thought she knew about trust and betrayal. Nara hesitated, torn between fear and something deeper, something she thought had died with her mother 3 years ago. Compassion. The kind that didn't ask questions or count the cost. The kind that got you killed. Cairo's grip loosened. His breath came faster, shallower, like his body was giving up even though his will wasn't. They're all I have left. Save them. Even if I don't make it. Nara looked at the babies, innocent, unaware, depending on her in a way no one ever had. She looked at Cairo, a stranger who had trusted her with his dying breath. And she made her choice. She nodded once, then turned and ran. The trail was steep and treacherous, rocks cutting through the thin soles of her shoes. She held the twins tight against her chest, their cries muffled by the wind and her pounding heart. Behind her, she heard shouting. Then a single, sharp crack, like a tree branch breaking, but heavier. Final. The kind of sound that meant someone wasn't getting back up. She didn't look back. By the time she reached the cabin, her lungs burned and her legs trembled so badly she could barely stand. The door hung crooked on rusted hinges, and inside it smelled like rot and abandonment. But it was shelter. It was hidden. For now, it was safe. She sat in the corner, back pressed against the wall, and pulled the twins closer to her body. They had stopped crying, but their tiny bodies were cold. She breathed warm air onto their faces and whispered things she didn't even believe. "You're okay. You're safe. I've got you." Hours crawled by. The night pressed down like a weight she couldn't shake. Nara's mind wouldn't stop replaying Cairo's face, the desperation, the blood, the way he'd looked at his children like they were the only thing in the world worth saving. Who was he? Why were people hunting him? And why had he been out here, alone in the mountains, with two babies? At dawn, when the first pale light crept through the cracks in the rotting wood, she heard footsteps again. Different this time, slower, more careful. Someone knocked on the door. Soft. Deliberate. Nara? Her blood turned to ice. No one knew her name. No one out here. The voice came again, calm and measured. "I know you're in there. I'm not here to hurt you." She pressed herself harder against the wall, clutching the twins so tightly they started to whimper. "I knew Cairo," the voice said. "He sent for help before they found him. I'm here to take the twins somewhere safe." Her throat tightened. "Who are you?" A pause. Long enough to feel dangerous. "My name is Dre. Cairo's brother." Nara's heart pounded. Cairo never mentioned a brother. But the way this man said his name, steady, weighted with something that sounded like grief, felt real. Or maybe it was just another lie. Another trap. Slowly, she stood. The twins shifted in her arms, making small sounds. She took a breath, walked to the door, and opened it. A tall man in a dark coat stood outside. His face was drawn, exhausted, eyes red like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw the twins, something inside him cracked. He reached out toward them, but stopped himself mid-motion, like he was afraid to touch something so fragile. "He didn't make it, did he?" Dre's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Nara shook her head. "They killed him." Dre exhaled slowly, his breath visible in the cold morning air. He looked toward the road, toward something Nara couldn't see. "I thought so. He called me just before he tried to escape. He said he trusted you. That you saved his children. Why didn't he want the police?" Dre's jaw clenched, muscles tightening beneath his skin. "Because the person who tried to kill him is someone inside his own company. Someone powerful enough to twist the story, bury the truth, and make anyone who talks disappear." A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. She looked down at the twins again, their tiny faces peaceful now, unaware of the nightmare they'd been born into. "So what happens now?" she asked. Dre hesitated. Something flickered across his face, calculation, guilt, determination. "I'll protect them. But I need something from you." His eyes locked onto hers, heavy with meaning she didn't understand yet. "You're the last person to see him alive. You may be the only one who can tell the real story before they rewrite it." Nara blinked. "Why me? I'm nobody." Dre's expression softened, but there was pain beneath it. Deep pain. Cairo wasn't just any man. He was one of the richest private investors in the state. Everyone knew his name, everyone except you. He paused. "That's why he trusted you. You cared more about the babies than about who he was. The ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. Cairo. A billionaire. The man bleeding in the snow, holding his children, whispering his last words to a stranger. It didn't make sense, but it explained everything. The watch. The jacket. The hitmen. The desperation. If I speak up, she said slowly, they'll come after me too. Dre nodded. Yes. They might. But I won't let anything happen to you. There was something in his voice, sincerity mixed with something darker. Guilt, maybe. Like he was carrying a weight that wouldn't let him go. Why do you care so much? She asked. He looked away. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely steady. Because I failed him last time. I won't fail again. The words hung in the air, heavy and unfinished. Nara felt the truth before he said it, felt it in the tremor of his hands, the way he couldn't quite meet her eyes, the grief that sat on him like a second skin. What do you mean, last time? Dre's face twisted with something between shame and rage. Cairo wasn't just running from someone who betrayed him. He was running because the betrayal came from inside the family. His voice cracked. Someone he once protected from everything. The realization hit her slowly, like ice cracking beneath her feet, spreading outward until there was nowhere safe to stand. Someone like you, she whispered. Dre didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. The world narrowed around her. She had trusted him. She had opened the door. And now she didn't know if she just handed the twins to the man who had helped kill their father. But then she looked at the babies, tiny, innocent, completely helpless, and something inside her hardened. She could run. She could hide. She could spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. Or she could do what no one had done for her mother when she died alone in a hospital that wouldn't take charity cases, stand up for the truth, no matter who she was facing. Her voice was steady when she spoke. If you want me to help, then you tell me everything. All of it. No more secrets. Dre met her eyes, and for the first time his carefully constructed mask cracked wide open. Fear, guilt, and something close to desperation flickered across his face like lightning in a storm. He took a breath. You're right. I owe you that much. And he began to talk. But what Nara didn't know, what she couldn't know yet, was that this conversation in a broken-down cabin was just the beginning. That the hungry girl with nothing to her name and the billionaire's brother with everything to lose were about to step into a war that would test everything they believed about justice, family, and what it means to stand up when the whole world wants you to stay down. The real battle hadn't even started yet. Dre didn't sit down, he paced like a man trying to outrun his own words. Cairo and I weren't always like this, he said. His voice was low, controlled, but there was a tremor beneath it. We built something together. Something that mattered. Nara stayed near the door, the twins still in her arms. She didn't trust him. Not yet. Then what happened? He stopped walking and looked at her. I got greedy. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Nara said nothing. She had learned a long time ago that silence made people talk more than questions ever did. We started the company when we were young, Dre continued. Cairo had the vision. I had the connections. We made a good team. But somewhere along the way, I started thinking I deserved more credit. More control. More money. He exhaled slowly. I made a deal with someone I shouldn't have. A man named Marcus Lane. Nara's grip tightened on the twins. Who's Marcus Lane? Cairo's business partner. Or he was supposed to be. Dre's jaw clenched. Marcus was our mentor once. He taught us everything, how to invest, how to read people, how to survive in a world that chews up men like us and spits them out. But Marcus had his own plans. He wanted Cairo's empire, and he was willing to do anything to get it. So he killed him. Not alone. Dre's voice cracked. He needed someone on the inside. Someone Cairo trusted. Someone who could feed him information, open doors, look the other way when things didn't add up. He paused, and the weight of what he was about to say pressed down on him like a stone. That person was me. Nara felt her stomach drop. You helped him? I didn't know it would go this far. Dre's hand shook. I thought Marcus just wanted to push Cairo out of the company. Force him to sell his shares. I didn't think, he stopped, his voice breaking. I didn't think he'd try to kill him. Nara stared at him, her mind racing. But you knew something was wrong. You knew, and you didn't stop it. I tried. Dre's voice rose, desperate now. When I realized what Marcus was planning, I warned Cairo. I told him to get out, to take the twins and disappear. But Cairo wouldn't leave. He said he'd spent his whole life running from people who wanted to destroy him, and he wasn't going to do it again. His voice dropped to a whisper. He said he'd rather die fighting than live hiding. So you let him. The words cut deeper than Nara intended, but she didn't take them back. Dre flinched like she'd struck him. I didn't let him die. His voice was raw now, stripped of all pretense. I failed him. I was weak, and I was selfish, and by the time I realized how far Marcus would go, it was too late. Cairo called me from the mountains, bleeding out, begging me to save his children. And I couldn't even get there in time to say goodbye. Nara watched him carefully. She had seen liars before, plenty of them. Men who smiled while they stole from you. Women who promised help and disappeared when you needed it most. But Dre wasn't lying. His guilt was too real, too messy. Liars were clean. Guilt was blood you couldn't wash off. Why should I believe you? She asked quietly. Dre looked at her, and for the first time she saw something other than grief in his eyes. She saw resolve. Because if I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. Marcus knows you were with Cairo. He knows you have the twins. And he's coming for you. A chill ran down her spine. How do you know that? Because Marcus doesn't leave witnesses. Dre pulled a phone from his pocket and showed her a message. It was short, cold, deliberate, asterisk find the girl. Find the twins. No loose ends, asterisk. Nara's breath caught. When did you get this? An hour ago. From someone inside Marcus's circle. He put the phone away. I still have people loyal to Cairo. They're feeding me information. But it won't be long before Marcus figures out who they are. Nara looked down at the twins. They were asleep now, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. They didn't know how much danger they were in. They didn't know their father had died trying to save them. What do you want from me? She asked. I want you to help me expose Marcus. Dre stepped closer, his voice urgent now. Cairo kept evidence. Files, recordings, transactions that prove Marcus was embezzling money from the company. Millions of dollars. Enough to bury him for life. Then take it to the police. I can't. Dre's face darkened. Marcus has people in the police. Judges, lawyers, politicians, he owns half the city. If I go to the authorities without proof they can't ignore, he'll make it disappear. And he'll make me disappear too. Nara felt the weight of what he was asking settle over her like a net. So you need me to testify? To tell them what I saw? Yes. And if I say no? Dre didn't hesitate. Then Marcus wins. Cairo's death gets buried. The twins grow up without knowing their father was murdered. And you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, waiting for the day Marcus decides you're too dangerous to leave alive. Nara hated how much sense it made. She hated that she was standing in a broken-down cabin, holding two babies who weren't hers, about to make a choice that could get her killed. But most of all, she hated that she already knew what her answer would be. Tell me everything, she said. Who Cairo was. What Marcus did. And where the evidence is. Dre nodded slowly. Cairo wasn't born rich. He grew up poor, just like you. Worse, maybe. His parents died when he was 12, and he spent the next 6 years in foster homes that didn't care if he lived or died. He paused, his voice softer now. But Cairo refused to stay down. He worked 3 jobs, put himself through college, and built an investment company from nothing. By the time he was 30, he was worth more than most people see in a lifetime. So what went wrong? Success made him a target. Dre's expression hardened. Marcus was Cairo's mentor, but he was also jealous. Cairo had something Marcus never did: vision, loyalty, heart. People followed Cairo because they believed in him. Marcus only had power because people feared him. He paused. When Cairo started using his money to fund projects for struggling communities, hospitals, schools, housing, Marcus saw it as a waste. He wanted profit, not charity. So he started skimming money from Cairo's investments. Small amounts at first. Then bigger. And Cairo found out. Not soon enough. Dre's voice turned bitter. By the time Cairo discovered what Marcus was doing, millions were already gone. Cairo confronted him, gave him a chance to return the money and walk away. But Marcus didn't walk. He doubled down. He hired people to dig up dirt on Cairo, fabricate scandals, destroy his reputation. And when that didn't work, he decided to remove Cairo permanently. Nara's chest tightened. How did Cairo end up in the mountains? He was hiding the twins. Dre's voice cracked again. Their mother, Cairo's wife, died in childbirth 6 months ago. Cairo was raising them alone. When he started getting death threats, he took them somewhere he thought Marcus couldn't reach. But Marcus has people everywhere. He tracked Cairo down, sent men to finish the job, and he stopped, unable to continue. Nara finished for him. And Cairo died protecting them. Dre nodded, his face pale. The evidence Cairo gathered is encrypted. It's locked in a digital vault that requires either his fingerprint or a backup key. I don't have access to either. Then how do we get it? Cairo gave the backup key to someone he trusted. Dre met her eyes. His assistant, Elena. If we can find her, we can unlock the files and take Marcus down. Nara felt the pieces shifting, the story growing bigger and more dangerous with every word. And if we can't find her? Dre's silence was answer enough. A sound outside made them both freeze, a car engine, low and distant, growing closer. Dre moved to the window and looked out. His face went pale. They found us. Nara's heart slammed against her ribs. How? I don't know. Dre pulled a gun from inside his coat. But we need to leave. Now. Nara clutched the twins tighter. Where do we go? Somewhere Marcus can't follow. Dre grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the back of the cabin. Trust me. Just this once. She didn't have a choice. They ran. They didn't stop running until they reached a gas station 20 miles outside Grey Ridge. Dre pulled into the back lot, killed the engine, and sat there breathing hard. Nara was in the passenger seat, the twins bundled against her chest. Her heart was still racing, her hands still shaking. She kept replaying the moment they'd burst out of the cabin, the sound of tires crunching gravel, voices shouting, the crack of a gunshot that hit the doorframe just as they disappeared into the trees. Dre had a car hidden half a mile down the trail. He didn't explain how he knew it would be there. He just drove. Now, in the dim light of the gas station, he finally looked at her. You okay? Nara nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. Who were they? Marcus's men. Same ones who killed Cairo. Dre's voice was flat, exhausted. They're good at what they do. We won't have much time before they find us again. Then why did we stop? Because I need to make a call. He pulled out his phone, hesitated, then looked at her. And because you need to understand who Cairo really was. Not just what happened to him, but who he was before all of this. Nara frowned. Why does that matter? Because if you're going to risk your life to tell his story, you need to know it's worth telling. She didn't argue. Dre stepped out of the car and made his call, his voice low and tense. Nara watched him through the windshield, then looked down at the twins. They were still asleep, oblivious to the chaos around them. She wondered what kind of man their father had been. What kind of man dies holding his children, begging a stranger to save them? Dre came back a few minutes later. His face was tight, unreadable. Elena's alive. My contact found her. She's hiding in the city, but she's scared. She won't meet us unless we can prove we're not working for Marcus. How do we do that? We don't. Not yet. Dre started the car again. First, I need to show you something. They drove for another hour, through back roads and small towns that blurred together in the dark. Nara didn't ask where they were going. She was too tired to argue, too numb to care. But when they finally stopped, she sat up straighter. They were parked outside a building, tall, glass, modern. The sign above the entrance read Cairo Stratton Memorial Clinic. Nara stared at it. What is this? One of the first projects Cairo funded. Dre got out of the car, and Nara followed, still holding the twins. The building was quiet, but lights glowed inside. Through the glass doors, she could see a waiting room filled with people, families, children, elderly men and women. All of them looked tired. All of them looked like her. Dre pressed a hand against the glass. Cairo grew up in a neighborhood where people died because they couldn't afford a doctor. His mother had diabetes, but she couldn't pay for insulin. She died when he was 10. His father had a heart attack 2 years later, collapsed on the street, and no one stopped to help. Nara's chest tightened. Cairo never forgot that, Dre continued. When he made his first $1 million, he didn't buy a mansion or a yacht. He built this clinic. Free healthcare for anyone who walked through the door. No insurance required. No questions asked. He turned to look at her. He funded 12 more after this one. Hospitals, schools, housing projects. He spent more money helping people than most billionaires make in a lifetime. Nara looked at the people inside, mothers holding sick children, old men clutching prescription papers, teenagers waiting quietly in plastic chairs. She thought about the nights she'd gone hungry because she couldn't afford both food and medicine. She thought about her mother, who had died because the hospital turned her away when she couldn't pay. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. "Because Marcus wants to shut all of this down." Dre's voice was hard now, angry. The clinics, the schools, everything Cairo built. Marcus sees it as wasted money. He wants to liquidate Cairo's assets, sell off the properties, and pocket the profits. If he takes control of the company, thousands of people lose access to health care. Kids lose their schools. Families lose their homes. Nara felt something cold settle in her stomach. He can do that? If no one stops him. Dre looked at her. Cairo's will leaves everything to the twins. But they're infants. They can't manage an empire. So the company falls to the board of directors, and Marcus controls the board. Unless someone challenges him in court and proves he's a thief and a murderer, he wins. Everything Cairo built dies with him. Nara stared at the clinic, at the people inside who had no idea how close they were to losing everything. She thought about Cairo again, bleeding in the snow, holding his children, whispering save them. She had thought he meant save their lives. But maybe he meant something bigger. "You said Cairo kept evidence," she said. "Where is it?" "Encrypted in a secure server. But like I said, we need Elena to access it. She has the key. Then we find her." Dre nodded. "There's something else you need to know." Nara turned to him. "What?" "Cairo didn't just keep evidence of the embezzlement. He kept evidence of everything Marcus has done over the past 10 years. Bribery, fraud, extortion. Marcus has been buying off politicians, paying judges, silencing whistleblowers. If those files go public, it's not just Marcus who goes down. It's half the power structure in this state." Nara felt the weight of it press down on her. That's why he's so desperate to kill us. Yes. Dre's voice was quiet now. And that's why he won't stop. Not until we're all dead, or he is. They stood there in silence, the glow of the clinic casting long shadows across the pavement. Nara looked down at the twins again. They had started to stir, tiny hands curling and uncurling. She thought about what kind of life they would have if Marcus won. No father. No legacy. Just money in a bank account and a lie written into history. She thought about what kind of life she would have if she walked away. Always looking over her shoulder. Always waiting for the knock on the door. I'm not backing down, she said. Dre looked at her, something like respect flickering in his eyes. Good. Because neither am I. He pulled out his phone again and showed her a message from his contact. Asterisk Elena agrees to meet. Tomorrow. Old office building on 5th Street. Rooftop garden. Noon, asterisk. Nara read it twice. Can we trust her? I don't know. Dre put the phone away. But she's the only chance we have. They got back in the car and drove through the city, past buildings that glittered with wealth and streets where people slept in doorways. Nara watched it all. This world Cairo had tried to change, this world Marcus wanted to control. She wondered if one person could really make a difference. If one girl with nothing could stand against a man with everything. Dre's voice broke through her thoughts. There's something I need to tell you. About me and Cairo. Nara looked at him. I told you I helped Marcus. That I fed him information. Dre's hands tightened on the wheel. But I didn't tell you why. Does it matter? Yes. His voice was rough. Because if you're going to trust me, you need to know the whole truth. Nara waited. I was jealous of Cairo, Dre said. He was everything I wasn't. Smarter, stronger, better. People loved him. They followed him. And he stopped, swallowed hard. I was just the brother. The one who stood in his shadow. So when Marcus came to me and said he could give me what I deserved, I listened. I told myself I was just leveling the playing field. But I was lying. I wanted Cairo to fail. I wanted him to lose. Nara felt a chill run through her. And then he did. Not the way I thought. Dre's voice cracked. I thought Marcus would push him out of the company. Force him to sell. I thought Cairo would just move on. Start over. But Marcus didn't want Cairo gone. He wanted him dead. And by the time I realized that, it was too late. He pulled the car into a motel parking lot and killed the engine. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Why are you telling me this? Nara asked. Because I don't want you to think I'm a good man. Dre turned to look at her, his eyes red and raw. I'm not. I helped kill my own brother. And I'll spend the rest of my life knowing that. But I can still do one thing right. I can make sure the twins are safe. I can make sure Cairo's legacy survives. And I can make sure Marcus pays for what he did. Nara steadied his face, the guilt, the grief, the desperate need for something close to redemption. She didn't forgive him. She wasn't sure she ever would. But she believed him. Tomorrow, she said. We find Elena. We get the files. And we end this. Dre nodded. Tomorrow. They checked into the motel under fake names, paid cash, and locked the door behind them. Nara fed the twins with formula Dre had bought at the gas station, then laid them down on the bed. They looked so small, so fragile. She wondered if they would ever know how many people had died trying to protect them. She sat by the window and watched the street below, cars passing, lights flickering, the world moving on like nothing had happened. But something had changed. She could feel it. The girl who had walked through the mountains yesterday, hungry and invisible, was gone. In her place was someone different. Someone who had a choice to make. Stand up. Or stay down. Fight. Or run. She looked at the twins one more time, then closed her eyes and made her decision. The rooftop garden smelled like rain and rust. Nara stood near the edge, looking out over the city while Dre checked the exits. The building was old, one of the first office towers Cairo had ever owned, back when he was just starting out. Now it sat abandoned, windows boarded up, graffiti crawling up the walls like vines. But the rooftop was still intact. Overgrown planters lined the perimeter, weeds pushing through cracked concrete, and in the center stood a metal bench where the paint had long since peeled away. Dre said this was where Cairo had proposed to his wife. Nara didn't know why that detail mattered, but it did. It made Cairo feel more real. Not just a billionaire. Not just a victim. A man who had loved someone enough to bring them here, to this quiet place above the noise, and ask them to stay. "She's late," Dre muttered, checking his watch. It was 12:15. Nara adjusted the twins in the carrier strapped to her chest. They were awake now, looking around with wide, curious eyes. She wondered what they saw, just shapes and colors, or something more. Something they would remember later, even if they didn't understand it now. "Maybe she's not coming," Nara said. "She'll come." Dre's voice was tight. "She has to." A door creaked open behind them. Nara spun around, heart racing. A woman stepped onto the rooftop, small, thin, mid-30s, with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes were red, and she moved like someone who hadn't slept in days. She stopped when she saw Dre, her hand hovering near her jacket pocket. "Elena," Dre said carefully. "It's okay. It's just us." Elena's eyes darted to Nara, then to the twins. Her face twisted with something between grief and relief. "Are they?" "They're safe," Nara said quietly. Elena exhaled, and for a moment she looked like she might collapse. But she stayed on her feet, stayed alert. "How do I know you're not working for Marcus?" "Because if I were, you'd already be dead." Dre took a step closer, hands raised. "I know you're scared. I know you don't trust me. But Cairo trusted you. He gave you the key for a reason." Elena's jaw tightened. "Cairo's dead because people he trusted betrayed him." The words hit like a slap. Dre flinched but didn't argue. "I'm not asking you to trust me," he said. "I'm asking you to trust what Cairo wanted. He wanted the truth to come out. He wanted Marcus to pay. And he wanted his children to inherit the world he built, not the one Marcus is trying to steal." Elena stared at him for a long moment, then looked at Nara. "Who are you?" "Nobody," Nara said. "Just someone who was in the wrong place at the right time." Elena studied her, and something in her expression softened. "Cairo talked about you. Before he died. He called me from the mountains. He said he met a girl who reminded him of himself, someone who had nothing but refused to give up." Her voice cracked. "He said if anything happened to him, I should find you. That you were the only one he could trust." Nara felt her chest tighten. Cairo had said that? About her? Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a small metal object, a USB drive on a chain. "This is the key. Everything Cairo collected on Marcus is encrypted on a secure server. This drive unlocks it. Financial records, emails, recordings. Enough to bury Marcus and everyone who helped him." Dre stepped forward. "Then let's use it. We go to the authorities." "No." Elena's voice was sharp. "You don't understand. Marcus has people everywhere. Police, judges, prosecutors. If we go through normal channels, the evidence disappears and we disappear with it." "Then what do we do?" Nara asked. Elena hesitated. "There's one person Marcus doesn't own. A federal investigator named Sarah Graham. She's been trying to build a case against Marcus for years, but she's never had enough proof. If we give her this, she can bring him down. But we have to get it to her directly. No intermediaries. No one else can know." Dre nodded. "Where is she?" "Downtown. Federal building. But we can't just walk in there. Marcus has people watching. If he knows we're going to her. A sound cut through the air, a door slamming open below them. Footsteps. Heavy, fast, multiple people. Elena's face went pale. They found us. Dre pulled his gun. How? No one knew we were here. Someone did. Elena's voice shook. Someone always does. Nara's heart slammed against her ribs. She looked at the stairwell door, then at the fire escape on the opposite side of the roof. We need to move. Now. But before they could run, 3 men burst onto the rooftop, suits, sunglasses, guns already drawn. They moved with precision, spreading out to block the exits. One of them smiled, a cold, empty smile that made Nara's stomach turn. Nobody moves, he said. Dre raised his gun, but there were 3 of them and only one of him. The math didn't work. The man in the center stepped forward. Mr. Stratton. Ms. Reyes. And his eyes landed on Nara. The girl from the mountains. Marcus will be pleased. Marcus can go to hell, Dre said. The man laughed. He probably will. But not today. He held out his hand. Give me the drive. Elena clutched it tighter. No. Then we take it. The man's smile disappeared. And we take the babies too. Marcus wants to make sure there are no loose ends. Nara felt ice flood her veins. She stepped back, instinctively shielding the twins with her body. You're not touching them. We're not asking. The man nodded to his companions. They moved forward. Dre fired. The shot cracked through the air, and one of the men went down, clutching his shoulder. The other 2 dove for cover, returning fire. Dre grabbed Nara and pulled her behind a concrete planter. Elena ducked low, still gripping the drive. Go! Dre shouted. The fire escape, go! Nara ran. Bullets tore through the air behind her, splintering wood and concrete. She could hear Elena's footsteps beside her, hear Dre firing back, hear the men shouting orders. The fire escape was 10 feet away. Then 5. Then. Elena cried out. Nara turned just in time to see her stumble, blood blooming across her side. She fell to her knees, gasping. No, Nara started toward her, but Elena shook her head. Take it. She held out the drive, her hand trembling. Take it and run. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Elena's voice was fading now, breath coming in short, painful gasps. The twins, they need you. Cairo, he trusted you. She pressed the drive into Nara's hand. The key isn't enough. You need the witness. What witness? Elena's eyes fluttered. Vincent Cole. Head of security. He saw everything. He's hiding, rural safe house, she coughed, blood on her lips. Find him. He'll tell you everything. Elena, stay with me. But Elena's eyes closed. Her hand went limp. Nara felt something break inside her chest, but there was no time to grieve. Dre was still firing, still buying her time. She looked at the twins, still safe, still breathing, and made her choice. She ran. The fire escape rattled under her weight as she climbed down, 2 floors, 3, her hand slipping on the wet metal. Behind her she could hear shouting, more gunfire, the sound of footsteps thundering down the stairwell. She hit the alley and kept running, the drive clutched tight in her fist. She didn't stop until she reached the street, didn't look back until she was 3 blocks away. And when she finally did, she saw smoke rising from the rooftop, heard sirens wailing in the distance. Dre found her 20 minutes later, bleeding from a gash on his arm but alive. He looked at her, then at the drive in her hand. Elena, he asked quietly. Nara shook her head. Dre closed his eyes, grief and rage warring on his face. Did she tell you anything? Vincent Cole, Nara said. She said he's the witness. Then he saw everything. Dre opened his eyes. Vincent was Cairo's head of security. He disappeared 6 months ago, right after Cairo started investigating Marcus. Everyone thought he was dead. He's not. Nara looked at the drive. Elena said he's hiding. A rural safe house. We find him, we get his testimony, and we have everything we need to take Marcus down. Dre nodded slowly. Then that's what we do. They walked in silence for a while, blending into the crowd, just two more people in a city full of strangers. Nara's mind was racing, replaying Elena's final words, the way she'd looked at the twins, the blood spreading across her shirt. She saved us, Nara said quietly. I know. And now she's dead. Dre's voice was raw. I know. Nara looked down at the twins. They had fallen asleep again, oblivious to the violence, the death, the weight of the world pressing down on them. She wondered how many more people would die before this was over. She wondered if she would be one of them. But she didn't stop walking. She had the key. She had a name. And she had a choice to make: run or finish what Cairo started. She thought about Elena's final words, he trusted you. And she kept moving forward. Vincent Cole lived in a house that looked like it wanted to disappear. It sat at the end of a gravel road, 40 miles outside the city, hidden behind a wall of pine trees and overgrown brush. The paint was peeling, the windows were covered with heavy curtains, and a rusted chain-link fence surrounded the property like a warning. Nara counted 3 security cameras before they even reached the driveway. Dre parked the car half a mile back and they walked the rest of the way. The twins were bundled against Nara's chest, quiet and warm. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the trees, and the air smelled like earth and rain. How do you know he's still here? Nara asked. I don't. Dre kept his eyes on the house. But Elena wouldn't have sent us here if she wasn't sure. They reached the gate. Dre pressed the intercom button and waited. No answer. He pressed it again, longer this time. A voice crackled through the speaker, low, rough, suspicious. Who are you? Dre Stratton. Cairo's brother. Silence. Then, Cairo's dead. I know. Dre's voice was steady. That's why I'm here. Another pause, longer this time. Nara could feel someone watching them, eyes behind the cameras, a finger hovering over a trigger. Her pulse quickened. What do you want? The voice asked. The truth. And your help. The intercom went silent. For a moment Nara thought Vincent wasn't going to answer. Then the gate buzzed and clicked open. They walked up the driveway, gravel crunching under their feet. The front door opened before they reached it, and a man stepped out onto the porch. He was tall, broad-shouldered, late 40s, with graying hair and a face carved from hard years. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans, but Nara could see the gun tucked into his waistband. Vincent looked at Dre, then at Nara, then at the twins. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, recognition, maybe, or regret. You shouldn't have come here, Vincent said. We didn't have a choice. Dre stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. Marcus is cleaning house. Elena's dead. Cairo's dead. And we're next unless we stop him. Vincent's jaw tightened. I can't help you. You're the only one who can. Dre's voice rose, frustration breaking through. You saw what Marcus did. You were there when he started stealing from Cairo. You know everything. And that's why I left. Vincent's voice was hard. Because I know what happens to people who cross Marcus. They don't just die. They disappear. Their families disappear. Everyone they ever cared about disappears. Nara stepped forward. Is that why you're hiding? Because you're afraid? Vincent's eyes snapped to her. I'm alive. That's more than I can say for Cairo. The word stung, but Nara didn't back down. Cairo died protecting his children. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He fought. And look where it got him. Vincent's voice was bitter now. Bleeding out in the mountains while Marcus walks free. You think testifying is going to change that? You think the system is going to suddenly care because I tell the truth? I think it's worth trying. Nara's voice was quiet but firm. Because if you don't, those twins grow up in a world where Marcus wins. Where their father's murder gets buried. Where everything Cairo built gets destroyed. Vincent looked at the twins again, and something in his face cracked. He turned away, his hands gripping the porch railing like he was trying to hold himself together. I have a daughter, he said quietly. She's 8. Lives with her mother in another state. I haven't seen her in 6 months because if Marcus finds out where she is, he'll use her to get to me. His voice shook. You're asking me to risk her life. To risk everything. Nara felt the weight of his fear, the impossible choice he was facing. She thought about her own mother, how she had died alone, how no one had fought for her, how the world had just moved on like she never existed. I grew up with nothing, Nara said. No money. No family. No one who cared if I lived or died. I spent most of my life invisible, just another hungry kid people walked past without looking twice. She paused, her voice steady. But Cairo saw me. He didn't know me. He didn't know me anything. But in his last moments, when he could have saved himself, he chose to save his children instead. He trusted me to finish what he started. Vincent turned back to her, his eyes red. I can't promise your daughter will be safe, Nara continued. I can't promise any of us will be safe. But I can promise that if we do nothing, Marcus wins. And everyone Cairo loved, everyone he tried to protect, dies for nothing. Vincent stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Dre. You really Cairo's brother? Yes. Then you know what kind of man he was. What he stood for. Dre nodded slowly. I do. And I know I failed him. I let my jealousy blind me. I helped the man who killed him. His voice cracked. But I'm not walking away this time. I'm going to make this right, even if it kills me. Vincent steadied them both, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like a stone. Finally, he exhaled and stepped back. Come inside. We don't have much time. The inside of the house was sparse, bare walls, minimal furniture, everything packed and ready to move at a moment's notice. Vincent led them into a small living room and gestured for them to sit. Nara lowered herself onto the couch, adjusting the twins carefully. Dre stayed standing, tense and alert. Vincent pulled a laptop from a drawer and opened it. I recorded everything. Meetings, phone calls, transactions. I knew what Marcus was doing, and I knew Cairo would need proof eventually. He pulled up a folder filled with audio files. This is 6 months of evidence. Marcus admitting to embezzlement. Marcus bribing city officials. Marcus threatening people who got in his way. Dre leaned forward. Why didn't you give this to Cairo when you had the chance? Vincent's face darkened. Because I was a coward. I told myself I was gathering more evidence, that I needed to be sure. But the truth is I was scared. And by the time I worked up the courage to come forward, Cairo was already dead. He clicked on one of the files. A voice filled the room, cold, clipped, unmistakably Marcus. Cairo's becoming a problem. He's asking too many questions, digging too deep. We need to handle this before he figures out how much we've taken. Another voice, younger, uncertain. What do you want me to do? Whatever it takes. Make it look like an accident. And make sure there's no trail back to us. The recording ended. The room fell silent. Nara felt her stomach turn. He planned it. All of it. Worse. Vincent pulled up another file. He didn't just plan Cairo's murder. He planned to take control of the company, liquidate Cairo's assets, and pocket the profits. Everything Cairo built, the clinics, the schools, the housing projects, Marcus is going to shut it all down and sell it off piece by piece. Dre's hands curled into fists. How many people does he have on the inside? Enough. Vincent's voice was grim. Police, lawyers, judges. Marcus has been buying influence for years. That's why I didn't go to the authorities. I knew they wouldn't listen. Or worse, they'd tip Marcus off and I'd end up dead. Then what do we do? Nara asked. Vincent looked at her. We bypass the system. We go straight to the public. We leak the recordings, the financial records, everything. Once it's out there, Marcus can't bury it. The media will run with it. The feds will have no choice but to investigate. Dre frowned. And what happens to us? We become targets. Vincent's voice was steady. Marcus will come after us with everything he has. But at least we'll have a fighting chance. And Cairo's children will have a future. Nara looked down at the twins. They were awake now, looking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. She thought about Cairo's final words, save them, and she realized he hadn't just meant save their lives. He meant save their future. Save the world he had tried to build for them. I'm in, she said. Dre nodded. So am I. Vincent hesitated, then reached for his phone. I'll make the arrangements. But once we do this, there's no going back. Marcus will know. And he'll come for us. Let him come, Nara said quietly. Vincent looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time she saw something like respect in his eyes. He picked up his phone and started dialing. But before he could finish, the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness. Nara's heart slammed against her ribs. She heard Dre move, heard the sound of a gun being drawn. Vincent? Dre's voice was low, urgent. Stay down. Vincent's voice came from somewhere near the window. They found us. Nara clutched the twins tighter, her breath coming fast and shallow. She could hear movement outside, footsteps, whispers, the sound of someone testing the door. Then the glass shattered. A canister flew through the window, hissing as it hit the floor. Smoke began to fill the room, thick, choking, burning her lungs. Nara covered the twins' faces with her jacket and tried to stand, but her eyes were streaming, her throat closing. Back door. Vincent shouted. Go. Dre grabbed Nara's arm and pulled her toward the kitchen. She stumbled, half blind, the twins crying against her chest. Behind them she heard more glass breaking, boots hitting the floor, voices shouting commands. They burst through the back door into the cold night air. Vincent was right behind them, firing shots back into the house. They ran into the trees, branches tearing at their clothes, roots catching their feet. The car, Dre gasped. No time. Vincent grabbed his arm. They'll have it surrounded. There's a trail half a mile north. Follow it to the main road. I'll hold them off. You'll die, Nara said. Vincent looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something she recognized, the look of a man who had finally stopped running. Maybe. But at least I'll die doing the right thing. He turned and fired again, drawing the gunman's attention. Dre pulled Nara deeper into the trees, and they ran. They didn't stop until they couldn't hear the gunfire anymore. Didn't stop until the twins' cries faded to whimpers and Nara's lungs felt like they were on fire. When they finally collapsed against a tree, gasping for air, Dre pulled out his phone. Vincent sent the files, he said, his voice shaking. Before they came. He uploaded everything to a secure server and sent the access codes to a journalist he trusts. Nara stared at him. So it's out there? It will be. By tomorrow morning, the whole world will know what Marcus did. Nara felt something between relief and terror wash over her. Then we won. Not yet. Dre's face was grim. Marcus knows we have the evidence. He knows we're coming for him. And he's not going to go down without a fight. In the distance, sirens wailed. Nara looked back toward Vincent's house and saw smoke rising into the night sky. She didn't know if he had made it out. She didn't know if any of them would make it out. But she knew one thing: they had crossed the line. There was no going back now. Nara's face was everywhere. Gas stations, news websites, television screens and store windows. A blurry photo someone had taken outside the federal building, her holding the twins, eyes wide, looking like a criminal caught in the act. The headline underneath read, "Teen Accomplice in Billionaire Murder Scandal." She stood in front of a television display at an electronics store, watching herself become a monster. The news anchor's voice was calm, professional, detached. Authorities are searching for 16-year-old Nara Wells in connection with the death of Cairo Stratton and his assistant, Elena Reyes. Sources say Wells may have been working with an organized crime syndicate to extort money from the Stratton estate. She is considered armed and dangerous. Nara felt like she couldn't breathe. Dre stood beside her, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might crack. Marcus moved fast. He's rewriting the story before we can tell ours. They think I killed him. Nara's voice was barely a whisper. They think I'm a criminal. That's what Marcus wants them to think. Dre turned to her. He's spinning the narrative. Painting Cairo as corrupt, you as a conspirator, and himself as the hero trying to save the company from criminals. Nara stared at the screen. Her own face stared back, young, dark, scared. She looked exactly like the kind of person people would believe was guilty. Not because of evidence. Because of how she looked. Who she was. Where she came from. A woman walking past the store glanced at the screen, then at Nara. Her eyes widened. She pulled out her phone. We need to move, Dre said urgently. They walked quickly down the street, heads down, blending into the crowd. The twins were hidden beneath Nara's jacket, quiet for now. They had been staying in cheap motels, paying cash, moving every few hours. But it was getting harder. People were looking for her. And people were starting to recognize her. Dre's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face went pale. What? Nara asked. The journalist Vincent sent the files to. She's dead. Car accident this morning. Nara's stomach dropped. Marcus? Has to be. Dre's hand shook. He's cleaning up. Eliminating anyone who could expose him. What about the files? Still out there. But without someone willing to publish them, they're just data on a server. Dre looked at her. We need to go public ourselves. Bypass the media. Put the truth out there where Marcus can't control it. How? Dre stopped walking. A live hearing. Federal courthouse. We demand to testify, in front of cameras, where Marcus can't silence us or twist our words. Nara stared at him. You think they'll let us? After everything Marcus has said about us? They don't have a choice. Dre's voice hardened. We have evidence. We have recordings. We have Vincent's testimony. He's still alive, by the way. He made it out and he's ready to talk. If we demand a public hearing and the court refuses, it looks like a cover-up. Marcus is counting on us staying quiet, staying scared. But if we force this into the open, he loses control. Nara thought about it. Every instinct told her to run. To take the twins and disappear. To let someone else fight this battle. But then she thought about Cairo, bleeding in the snow, whispering save them. She thought about Elena, dying on a rooftop, pressing the drive into her hand. She thought about Vincent, finally standing up after months of hiding, risking everything because it was the right thing to do. And she thought about herself, the hungry girl who had spent her whole life invisible, who everyone had walked past without a second glance. The girl Marcus thought he could erase with a few lies and a fabricated story. Let's do it, she said. The federal courthouse was surrounded by reporters. Cameras, microphones, news vans lined up like soldiers. Dre had called ahead, announced they were coming, demanded a hearing. The media had descended like vultures. But this time, Nara wasn't afraid of them. This time, they were going to hear the truth. Dre's legal team, two lawyers who had worked for Cairo and still believed in him, met them at the side entrance. They moved quickly through the halls, surrounded by security, ignoring the shouted questions from reporters. Is it true you killed Cairo Stratton? Where are the twins? Are you working for organized crime? Nara kept her head down, kept moving. The twins were with a woman Dre trusted, a former nanny who had cared for them when they were first born. They would be safe. At least for now. They entered the courtroom. It was packed, standing room only. Marcus sat at the front with his lawyers, looking calm, composed, like a man who had nothing to hide. When he saw Nara, he smiled. Not a warm smile. A predator's smile. The smile of someone who thought he had already won. The judge entered, an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Judge Sarah Graham. The same investigator Elena had mentioned. The one person Marcus didn't own. This hearing, the judge began, has been called to address allegations of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder related to the estate of Cairo Stratton. Mr. Stratton, you may present your opening statement. Dre stood. Your Honor, we're here to present evidence that Marcus Lane orchestrated the murder of my brother, Cairo Stratton, in order to seize control of his company and assets. We have financial records, audio recordings, and eyewitness testimony that prove Marcus has been embezzling money, bribing public officials, and threatening anyone who stood in his way. Marcus's lawyer stood immediately. Objection, Your Honor. These are baseless accusations made by a disgraced family member and a teenage girl with a criminal record. I don't have a criminal record, Nara said, her voice cutting through the room. The courtroom went silent. All eyes turned to her. The judge leaned forward. Miss Wells. You'll have your chance to speak. I need to speak now. Nara stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. Because everything Marcus is saying about me is a lie. And if I wait, he'll twist this just like he's twisted everything else. The judge studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Proceed. Nara took a breath. The cameras were on her now. The whole world was watching. She thought about running again. But she didn't. My name is Nara Wells. I'm 16 years old. I grew up poor, hungry, and invisible. Most of my life, people looked right through me like I didn't exist. And maybe that's why Cairo trusted me. Her voice steadied. Because I didn't care who he was. I didn't care about his money or his power. I cared about two babies who were crying in the cold, and a man who was dying trying to protect them. She paused, letting the words settle. Cairo Stratton didn't die in an accident. He was murdered. Shot and left to bleed out in the mountains by men Marcus Lane hired. I was there. I saw him. I heard his final words. And those words weren't about his money or his company. They were about his children. Save them, he said. That's all he cared about in the end. Marcus shifted in his seat, his composure cracking just slightly. Nara continued. Marcus wants you to believe I'm a criminal. That I'm working with some organized crime group. But the truth is, I'm just a girl who made a choice. I could have walked away. I could have pretended I didn't see anything. But I didn't. Because Cairo died protecting something bigger than himself. He built hospitals and schools and housing for people like me, people no one else cared about. And Marcus wants to destroy all of that so he can line his pockets. She pulled out the USB drive Elena had given her. This drive contained 6 months of evidence. Recordings of Marcus admitting to embezzlement. Financial records proving he stole millions. Testimony from Cairo's head of security, Vincent Cole, who saw everything and is willing to testify under oath. Dre's lawyer stepped forward and took the drive, handing it to the judge. Marcus's lawyer stood again, his voice sharp. Your Honor, this so-called evidence is inadmissible. It was obtained illegally, without proper authorization. It was obtained by Cairo Stratton, Dre interrupted. Who had every right to investigate his own company. And it was preserved by people who risked their lives to make sure the truth didn't die with him. The judge inserted the drive into a computer. The courtroom went silent as audio began to play, Marcus's voice, cold and clear, discussing the murder, the cover-up, the plan to seize control. Nara watched Marcus's face as his own words filled the room. Watched the color drain from his cheeks. Watched his lawyers scramble to object, to interrupt, to stop what was happening. But it was too late. The truth was out. When the recording ended, the judge removed the drive and looked at Marcus. Mr. Lane, you will remain in custody pending a full investigation. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Lane out of the courtroom. Marcus stood slowly, his face twisted with rage. As the bailiff approached, he turned to Nara. You think you've won? You're nobody. You'll always be nobody. Nara met his eyes, and for the first time she didn't flinch. Maybe. But I'm the nobody who brought you down. The bailiff led Marcus away. The courtroom erupted, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, people rising from their seats. But Nara just stood there, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders for the first time in days. Dre put a hand on her shoulder. You did it. She shook her head. We did it. 3 months later, Nara stood in the same courtroom. This time, it was empty. Quiet. Just her, Dre, and the twins, now healthy, growing, smiling. The legal battles were over. Marcus had been convicted on multiple charges: conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, bribery, fraud. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. Cairo's estate had been secured. His will was honored. The twins would inherit everything, not just the money, but the legacy. The clinics, the schools, the housing projects. Everything their father had built to help people like Nara. Dre had been cleared of any wrongdoing after cooperating fully with the investigation. And he had made good on his promise. He formally adopted the twins and asked Nara to be part of their lives, not as a nanny or a caretaker, but as family. He also established a foundation in Cairo's name, with Nara as one of the board members. Its mission, to help kids who had grown up like she did. Hungry. Invisible. Forgotten. Now, standing in the empty courtroom, Nara looked at the twins, a boy and a girl, their father's eyes, their father's strength. They didn't remember him. They were too young. But Nara would make sure they knew his story. Knew what he had sacrificed. Knew that he had died protecting them because he believed they deserved a better world. You ready? Dre asked. Nara nodded. Yeah. I'm ready. They walked out of the courthouse together, into the sunlight. Reporters had stopped following her weeks ago. The story had moved on. But Nara hadn't. She carried it with her, the memory of Cairo, the weight of what she'd done, the knowledge that sometimes one person really could make a difference. A week later, Nara drove to the mountains. To the place where she had found Cairo, bleeding and desperate, holding his children like they were the only thing that mattered. The trail looked different now. Peaceful. Quiet. The snow had melted, and wildflowers had started to grow. She stood at the spot where he had died and whispered the promise she had made to him that night. I kept them safe. Just like you asked. The wind moved through the trees, carrying her words away. And for a moment, she could almost feel him there, not as a ghost, but as a presence. A reminder that some battles are worth fighting. That some people are worth saving. And that even the hungriest, most invisible girl in the world can change everything. She turned and walked back down the trail, toward the car where Dre waited with the twins. Toward the life she never thought she'd have. Toward a future Cairo had died to give them. And as she walked, she smiled. Because she wasn't invisible anymore.